Hello, all you beautiful people. So, with Natlin down the line and Cappuccino coming up really soon, I wanted to rank all 5 Fatui introductions that we've seen so far and rank them from the least impressive to the most impressive. This is specifically going to be like the introduction scene where like their title card comes up. So not like the first impression, because people might say like, oh, such and such character from the trailer or whatever. Not talking about the trailer. We're talking about where they first appear in the story and they get the little title card thing. Let's start it up. All right, and number 5, I know people are already going to be pissed off at me, but let me explain. Let me explain. Number 5, I have Arleccino, the Knave here. And the reason for that is, I just think in comparison to some of the others, it's not as, like, cool and epic. Like, it's less of a villain introduction and more so like a mother at a PTA meeting type of introduction, which I think is fitting for how Arlecchino acts in the Fontaine arc. She's not an antagonist in this arc. She kind of has her own things that she wants to do, and she still wants to protect Fontaine, right? Like, the House of the Hearth is here, so of course she wants to protect the House of the Hearth and Fontaine itself. She has no reason to be a villain or antagonist in this arc, so it 100% makes sense why her first introduction is not going to seem as antagonistic, because she's just trying to reason with Neuvillette and Farina and try to figure out what they're doing about the crisis. But while it makes sense, unfortunately, in comparison to the other Fatui introductions, it does come off a little bit neutral, right? She's still a cool character, she still has a dominating presence, but in comparison, it's definitely the bottom of the list here. Please don't come at me, please, we're just basing on the first cutscene. Okay, here we go. So for that reason, the Knave, Arlecchino, gets my number 5 spot. Alright, for number 4, we got a double dose here, kind of. So, Scaramouche's first introduction is actually in a event that's long and gone now. It was, I think it was Unrekindled Stars or whatever. It was one of the first events in Genshin. This is the first time we actually see Scaramouche, and you can't see it anymore, unfortunately. It's not in the game anymore. But this was his real first introduction. I don't think it's as big or as impactful as some of the other ones. It's made as more of like a gotcha or like you know, surprise for the audience. Maybe because they weren't expecting Scaramouche to be a Fatui Harbinger. Of course, Mona is the one that recognizes it and teleports everybody away. But it's still very plain at the end of the day. It's more so Scara being intimidating and telling the Fatui what to do after the fact. There's not much to it. I do think he stands as a really good character. I think a lot of his facial expressions are really interesting, and seeing his design for the first time is great. Fantastic character. I just think some of the other ones are better. But now we have the other cutscene. So for most people who play Genshin now, this is the big introduction to Scaramouche, meeting him at the Delusion Factory in Inazuma. And it's still a pretty decent cutscene. It's a good intro for him as well. He's mostly just talking and grandstanding though while being inside the Delusion Factory. I think the big thing here is that he himself is not really doing most of what is like threatening here. Is the Delusion Factory itself. I do still think it's a great introduction. I think it introduces his character and personality. Again, you get to see his great design as well. But I think some of the other Fatui just kind of do it better. But the fact that he does have two, and the fact that he is definitely a little bit more intimidating than Arlecchino is why I'm putting him above Arlecchino. But it's not quite it. It's not quite it. I think some of the Fatui are just overall better with their introductions. But the scenery is still really good. His character is still really good, his design is still really fantastic, but it's just not quite there because he himself, I don't think, is doing enough to really push this as an intense, insanely good intro. So, a solid number 4 he shall be. Alright, and number 3, in my opinion, this is the textbook definition of a Fatui Harbinger introduction. You introduce them by being like demanding, showing their powers, absolutely sinister, absolutely controlling a scene. Like, look at her walk in here, just absolutely owning it right now. This is a true and the first introduction to the Fatui Harbingers. Signora shows it off. Signora knows how to do it. Look at her just messing with the Archon right now. It's great. It's fantastic. We get to see again her absolutely insane personality, her domineering personality. Even even in the sights of the Archon himself, Signora does not waver absolutely great showing. You get to show off that of the Fatui not harbingers, the I guess the Fatui foot soldiers as well, which Scara also had, but she just uses them a lot better, like holding down the Traveler and her taking the Gnosis as well. Like she does so much in this scene. It's great. It's fantastic. Again, textbook. This is textbook definition of like how to show off a Fatui Harbinger. It's so impressive. Honestly, there are some days where this is number one. Honestly, there are some days that this is number one. I think this is definitely where my personal preferences fit in. I think the other two who we haven't done yet, I think they're maybe a little bit better, but even with a tiny bit of convincing, I would very easily put her at number one. Fantastic cutscene, excellent introduction. Again, textbook definition of an introduction of a Fatui Harbinger. Maybe my biases are showing with this cutscene, but this cutscene is so cool, so shonen, and I can almost like hear a Bleach theme happening in the background. This is such an amazing cutscene, and one of the pinnacles of the Lea Archon quest itself. I think Tartaglia's true introduction as a Fatui Harbinger. Again, this is why I'm talking about not the first cutscene that we see him, because the first cutscene that we see Tartaglia is, you know, when he's saving us, but this is the first cutscene where he truly shows off what a Fatui Harbinger can do. And then the pinnacle. This is it. Straight up anime transformation. I bet you didn't know I have a Bunkai. Like, I'm all for it. It's so good. I love it with this because we meet him earlier, but they don't use the introduction earlier. They save it. They save it for this transformation, and it hits so good. It hits so good. Him fully decked out in his Devouring Deep outfit. It's so good. Extremely pissed off. You already did a boss battle with him. You already did phase 1 and phase 2. Heading into phase 3. The fact that they saved it for this is like... This is what makes the Lea arc so good, is this finale of it, and Tartaglia Child plays a huge role into it, and it all has to do with his introduction, showing off this form, showing off what he can really do. Like, the fact that we've seen his like playful personality before, but no, this is serious now. Maybe I'm overrating it a little bit, maybe, I won't deny that, but just... this is the only one that's a boss fight too. I do want to point out this is the only introduction that's in the middle of a boss fight, so I think for me that just gets some bonus points, but it just hits. It just hits so nicely right at that transformation, the card and everything. It's so anime. I love it so much. Absolutely fantastic. A solid number 2. Honestly, some days this is number 1. Some days this is number 1. If you could convince me this is number 1, I wouldn't even be mad at you. This is your number 1. It's so good. It's so good. Shout out to my boy Tartaglia. Speaking of being anime, the number one. There's something just uniquely sinister. There's something uniquely sinister, uniquely creepy, uniquely somewhat impressive and scary at the same time in everything in this cutscene. Seeing all the people clapping for you, seeing Dottore right in the middle right there, just standing there, calling himself the Doctor, and seeing the number 2. He's number 2 is the craziest, most insane part. People did not know his number before this cutscene happened. And then hearing that, what? He's number 2? He's the second strongest of the Fatui Harbingers? It's just, it hit so intensely because we made the jump, right? We made an insane jump from Signora all the way to Dottore. It's like, oh, that's the level of this threat. Right? So you have the intensity there. You have a sick, twisted personality all on display in front of you. All these people cheering for you. Him talking about how he manipulated them, like taking over their minds using the Akasha system. So, you know, they thinks you saved the whole entire city. And while being an obstacle too, all these good people in a way are an obstacle. You can't push them out of the way. You can't stop them. They're good people. So you can't get to Dottore. And they're just walking over there like zombies. It's absolutely insane and sinister, but such good character. It's such a weird and eerie scene, and I think it works as a perfect introduction to the sick and twisted person that Dottore is as a character. Shows him off perfectly. The essence, the presence, everything all about it is absolutely sinister, absolutely domineering, absolutely sick and twisted, just like how Dottore is. Seeing all the people cheer around you while he's saying all these crazy things, absolutely vile person. So so freaking good. It is so good. Whenever I think about this cutscene, I think about Dottore and how an insane of a character he is, which I think is perfect for a Fatui introduction. Right? What are we showing off the Fatuis? What are they capable of? What are they doing? Again, going back to the Signora thing. Signora shows up, shows what she's capable of, shows off her personality, and then is taking over the cutscene. And this is what Dottore does too, but you have that added layer, right? That added layer of what he can do, that creep factor of it. The fact that these people are essentially happy walking zombies? What? Insane. Insane. Gotta be number one for me. Number one Fatui introduction cutscene has got to go to Dottore, the Doctor, number 2 of the Fatui Harbingers. But that is my list. What are your guys' list? Your top 5 Fatui introductions? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think I'm insane? Let's start a conversation about it in the comments below. Do you even think that maybe Cappuccino is gonna maybe top the list in the future? I'm curious to see what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic day. Subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed all that good stuff. I will see you all later. Have yourselves a fantastic day and peace out.